Put a presentation tomorrow on that too. But thanks for coming in this morning. Welcome to another rainy two-day event at Green Lake. My name is Scott Anderson. I teach at Juda High School. If you haven't heard of it, it's because it's an extremely small district. It is K-12 building, 310 students total. I teach the high school. I have 95 students, 9, 10, 11, 12 total, about 20 per class. I'm the only 400 license in the whole district. So I teach basically, I catch some 7th grade, but almost all the 8th through 12th I teach. This year I have 8 preps. So I teach 1A, 1B, 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calc, Calc, Senior Math, and Physics. So when I talk about things I do, you have to put that in your mind. And if you think I'm nuts sometimes, that schedule would make you nuts too. I've been there 8 years. I do like teaching a small school. When I have a staff meeting, I pretty much always agree with myself, and I pretty much always do what I want. So, and this started about 4 years ago. I'm going to talk about ACT Aligned by Design, what we do at Juda. We've had some good results. Talk about how it fits in my horrible curriculum that I'm trying to fix. Hearing some things here this weekend. I'm a storyteller, so I'll tell you how I got here. What went wrong, what didn't work, what worked. I'll show you what I do, and then I'll show you my data. I keep data. I really try to avoid running by gut feel, because you just don't know how you're doing unless you're taking data. And I think the ACT is the best of all the worst tests. So, this started back in the summer of 2010. My administrator at the time came to me in early June and said, "You got to go to this conference in Monona Grove." I'm like, "Okay, what's it about?" "Math." I'm like, all right, here I go. And went up to the conference, and in the same time, back in 09 and 10, and I don't know, I look around, I see some familiar faces. UW-Platteville ran a big growth agenda with a whole lot of teachers from the southwest corner of the state. And I was probably the most easternly school to come into that grant. That 40% of incoming freshmen to Platteville that year were not ready for college mathematics. And you got to remember, anybody who gets into UW system schools take an Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. And they're testing into remedial math for no credit. So we have these two things going on. At the same time, I have, unfortunately, a moment where I get kind of slapped around. One of my pre-calculus students, who gets a C+, tests into remedial math. It's my second year of teaching. I started at 34. I'm a second career teacher. Never student taught. Came in on emergency license. All this wake-up calls happen to me all at the same time. What it's gone to is I make data-driven decisions about curriculum. My curriculum, almost for sure, is smaller than yours. I do less things, and I go deeper. I call it Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, because that's what colleges want to see. I would argue I probably do Math 1, 2, and 3. I do a lot more problem-based or project-based learning now than I did 4 years ago. I spend a lot more time going into bigger projects, deeper problems, and I spend a lot less time worrying about how many lessons or chapters I get done in the book. So, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to talk about Line by Design. How many of you know what it is? Just real rough show of hands. You're going to be bored for a few seconds. All right. I'll tell you what my goals were in 2010, and I'll tell you what my goals are today. I'll tell you what I do. I'll show you the results. I'll tell you where I'm going. I'm expanding the curriculum again now. Once you've mastered stuff and get really good at it, you don't have to review anymore. I'm starting to take that reward. I've narrowed the curriculum. I don't on my Algebra 2 book, 600-page book, I flipped to page 200 on the first day of class. And I'll take a question. And I'm really easy. If you want to interrupt me, you think I said something wrong, just stop me. Say Scott. That'll definitely get my attention, all right? And I'll go there. Aligned by Design, and this came from Hershey High School in Illinois up in Monona Grove, came up, and the whole idea is they were going to run, instead of the Wisconsin standards or the Common Core standards, they said, we're going to run to the ACT standards. They're 2 pages. I put one of them up here. And it's simple little things. It says, like, manipulate data from tables and graphs. Boom. And it has a bandwidth, and that gives you an ACT score of either 26 or 27. What's that mean? But that's what it is. And there's only about 80 of them. I don't count them. But And they're consistent, they're simple, they're targeted by Align by Design, this whole idea that I went to this conference on. Their thing was fewer, clearer, higher. There's definitely fewer. They're definitely short. You don't have to worry about reading a long paragraph to figure out what it is. But higher is what you make of it, I think, on this. The whole Align by Design is the idea that you're going to make instruction, assessment, and curriculum all match. And I'm a big believer in this. I start backward design. I start with what do I want students to know? Here's my assessment. How am I going to get there that they conceptually understand this? Not teaching to the test, but making real decisions on curriculum and not teaching things I don't think they need to know, or at least targeting what I think is the most important skills. The big part of the conference the first day was taking those standards, order fractions, it'll say. You can put fractions in order. And deciding what that is. They call it deconstructing standards. It meant taking that little sentence and making problems out of it. What's it really mean? And we spent a few hours doing that day. And really boring, for lack of a better way of saying it. Really boring. And a small school district at the time, thought to myself, well, if this is what it is, I'll never do this. Because I'll never have the time. But they harped on this, and this is what I think I took, this one thing. How we assess matters. Typical assessments were focused on algorithms, they're just procedurals. The skills are assessed in isolation, there's no context. You give partial credit, and I was partial credit, man. I believe that's how I gave feedback. I was grading tests, putting notes. Here's where you made your mistake. Oh, you just missed a sign, that's okay. -1 out of 5. But that, they just consistently said, if you give partial credit, you're rewarding partial learning. And clusters of many questions. And we talked about this, where you'd have 10 of the same type. And we're all teachers, we love helping students, so there'd be 10 of the same type, and that student would say, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. And say, well, you just kind of do this on the first one. And all of a sudden they say, oh yeah, and they get the other 10. Well, you're not helping them when you give them that little push on the first one. You're also not helping them when you cluster all the same types, is my belief. So they dropped this up. We deconstruct standards for a while, and Align by Design is on a principle that you're going to offer the same class for freshmen, same hour of the day, 3 times. They call it a college prep honors. I quickly call this what I think it is. It's tracking. You have remedial, regular, and the high kids. The thing that was kind of cool about the idea from Hershey is I'm going to move people in between the classes mid-year, mid-quarter. But I just told you I'm the only 400 licensed in my whole district. I'm not going to be able to set up these classes. I've fought with my district, and I don't know where 1A and 1B are going, but the only class I offer that has 2 sections is Algebra 1A versus Algebra 1. All right? Sorry. And this is the model they did. And this is only a big school can do this. Hershey has 50 math teachers down in the Chicago suburbs. They have 50 teachers. My whole building has 28 from K to 12. So I saw this great system. But I'm sitting in this workshop thinking, oh boy. And by the way, I'm not getting paid to go to these conferences. Welcome to Small School Living. They paid my registration. So I'm sitting there in Madison thinking, why am I here? But I saw a school, Hershey gained 4 points in 4 years on the composite. 4 points for every subject they did this in. That's pretty stellar. And the thing that really depressed me if you went there, they weren't going to give any of the materials. They deconstructed all these standards. They had all these beautiful packets. I showed you a few. They aren't going to share them. I'll tell you right now, if you want any of my stuff, they're all on Google Docs. I'll give you that. Send your email. There's too much information probably, but you can have whatever I've made. So this is all good. But how would a school of a couple math teachers, or how would I, as just a single math teacher, even take anything away from this? We're deconstructing standards. We're talking about how you do these classes and you're passing students. And at the time, that really meant nothing to me. So I actually asked Chris Rugg, who was running the conference, said, hey, I am the only math teacher. And I had to explain that to him because he thought I meant I was like the only algebra teacher, or I was the only geometry teacher. I had to get the reality of, no, this is a little building out in farm country, and I'm the only guy. I teach it all. And I said, how do I do this? And he says, I don't know how you do this. I have no idea. And he's right. You can't do a line by design. I don't know a staff number. You guys can make that argument. I know one or two teachers couldn't possibly do this. You couldn't escape the textbook. You can't write the curriculum. You can't deconstruct standards for multiple courses unless you're willing to give up sleep. Got 3 kids I like playing basketball with. So I'll tell you what I do now. There are some things I could take away from this because when I looked at this, there had to be some return. There had to be some low-hanging fruit from this thing that we could do at my district. Our ACT in that year, we had always been below state average, not just by a little. State average is about 21.5. We ran less than 20. All right, and this is pretty common for smaller districts if you don't have constant math teachers. We also had 6 math teachers in 6 years. So you become a training ground for new teachers. I knew conceptual understanding was the key, but I couldn't make a curriculum shift. I couldn't do what they did. I have to have a textbook. I do. When you have that many preps, there are days where you have to go grab the book and say, okay, I'm going to teach this, and I'm going to go. And that's the best I can do. But Hershey made a big improvement, and I wanted to capture some of that. So I made goals. I'm a big goal setter. Came from the private sector. This is always, I was an engineer for a dozen years. I always start with, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. I don't care how. I'm not sure how. And I said, I'm going to measure. I knew I was going to make some assessments, like I saw at the line by design, and they used multiple choice. So I was going to make these multiple choice assessments, and I wanted to see that my students just got better on whatever assessments I created. See what the scores are. Is it getting better? Are the topics getting better? The big one is I wanted to get our math ACT to and above the state average. At the very least, we should be at 21.5. I wanted to do it over 2 years. I wanted to get to 22.5. It's a 4.5% increase per year. Because I'm never looking for Juda to be 20% better or 10% better. I'm looking to be 2 to 3% better every year. Just continuous improvement. Finally, I had to stay within my current curriculum and my current syllabus. I couldn't change what I was doing. So, how many times have you guys heard this from a student after the ACT? Oh, I knew them, but I just couldn't remember how to do them. In 2010, I heard this quite a bit. I hardly ever hear this anymore now. But at the time, I heard it all the time. And I think if we go real fast, everybody's math teachers here, right? No administrators? I don't have to worry about going slow. Okay. We get these problems. The student who says, I knew how to do them. This is an easy order operation, right? But it's got that nasty little absolute value in there so you can screw up. Got the nasty little multiplication and exponent thing going there so you can screw up. I think we all can go, what, 4 minus 3, 1 minus another 4, negative 3. The answer's D. But there's 2 mistakes there that are set up on the ACT, right? They're 2 distractors is what they call them. And they did this all through, when you're making the problems and the assessments of the line by design, they were making these distractors. You know, that you could make this mistake and this mistake. And the ACT allows for this. So these students who think, oh, you know, I really struggled, I didn't know this, but I got this one. No, most likely they didn't get this one either. They probably picked A or C. And they felt good when they got the answer 3 or 5, but they didn't get the right answer. And that's how you get these lower scores. And again, that's what colleges accept. You know, it is the best of the worst tests. Small mistakes are huge killers. Real conceptual problems. I would argue that when they make those errors, I have not done what I need to do yet. So, you saw it before, but you never learned it. I put it on the board, you did some homework on it, but I never made you a master of it. And that's on me. I accept that that's my job. So, I said to myself, we're going to make sure from that 16 to 20 area, they're going to be good at these problems. So, I kind of made the mantra of don't screw up easy. Don't screw up easy. And I kind of started to take that partial credit thing away. Just a little bit. I also made the students understand that they own these topics. I started changing the culture. It's not, you know, just do the test, be done with the test. You're responsible for first order equations. You're responsible for being able to do integer order of operation, ordering fractions. You own these things if you want to be successful. And those are the 2 big changes. It's your learning, not mine. I'm just a guide. We had to do that. But if you're going to do that, you need a system that supports that. You know, how do you make students want to do this. Well, it's sticking, you kind of say, yeah, you can do this, and you hit them with a stick. It's recursive. I've come back to some cliches I use a lot in my class. If you don't use it, you lose it. You have to do it. When I first started this, I was terrified how bad juniors were at rounding. I was terrified how bad juniors were with naming place values beyond maybe the thousands place. It was skills they hadn't used since middle school, and since you didn't do it, they lost it. Or how about you take a junior away and make them do some easy fractions by hand? I do that. It keeps the skills fresh. It helps with setting up for abstract rationals. I believe, but again, when I first did it, it was not fun. All or nothing mentality. They harped on that, so I thought, they're the experts, right? Let's do this. And I wanted to only take 30, 40 minutes a week out of my class period. I wanted it to stay within my curriculum. I wanted to keep doing some of the projects I was starting to set up. I was willing to do these assessments in 2 20-minute blocks. 20% of my week would be dedicated to getting us more proficient. Yeah.
So if there are no partial credits, I'll just on these first tests?
That's where it started. And now I'm down to basically problems are 5 points on a test. It's more like a unit test. And I'm pretty much, -3 or -5. And in my school, 7% scale is a D minus. 69 is an F. So when I take 3 points away, boom, I've given them a dead middle F. So that forces it. And it gets you away from stories like, the one that really kind of made me change when I first did this, I had a student come to me and said, we were doing recursive quizzes, he comes to me and he kept getting the polynomial division problems wrong in Algebra 2. I had moved it from the idea that this is a mastered skill and he hadn't mastered it. So he came and said, I need some polynomial division problems. Okay. And I set it up, and I don't remember what it was, but like x plus 1 into like x cubed plus blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't matter what the blah, 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 blah was, because I said, well, how do you start? He says, well, I just put x squared here. I'm like, great, why? Because I get 2 points out of 5. Absolutely, that's why. I get it. Well, why did you put x squared? Well, that's 1 power less than the thing inside. So he wasn't even thinking about, it was just his coping mechanism, because students will cross the lowest bar we set. I did. I was a good grade student, but a poor student for learning. I never cared, guys. First thing I figured out in my math class is how much homework did I have to do? And start from that minimum amount and try to do less. I started doing these skill checks. You're asking about right, wrong. They looked exactly like this, where I put in the code that they used at Line by Design. So this is like numbers and processes, and they bandwidth it. It's a third one down, and I stopped doing that. I don't have time for that. But at the time, the first year I did this. And it's all the answers and the distractors, reduce a fraction, which fractions are undefined, and just real basic stuff. I was handing these quizzes out, and we would do these quizzes. And they were going to be 50 points, right, wrong, 10 points each. Had to write work so that if you guessed, you didn't get credit. That was something I threw on initially. I didn't want students to get lucky. But, I guess that other slide didn't come up. Never mind. But this is what I was given. And I think right now I got to pause. You got to take a little bit about what my philosophy of education is. Because I give this quiz, and I believe I grade academic mastery. And not behavior, not time, not responsibility. I always joke, 2 plus 2 was hard for everybody at one point in your life. And if you learned 2 plus 2 is 4 on Tuesday, and you learned that 2 plus 2 is 4 on Thursday, you're both fine, unless the test was on Wednesday. Then you look great, and you don't. I have to get to all the students, and I don't want time to be a constraint. If time's not a constraint, when I make that quiz and someone tanks it, I have to give them a chance to do it again. And I was doing re-quizzes that year like you cannot believe. I'm talking, I'd make one and have 6 more revs behind it. I was having a hard time not accepting accepting no credit, because I would follow the work and I would see -2 at that bottom, and they would go over and circle 2. And I would take all 10. It was bothering me, but it doesn't bother me anymore. But it bothered me. quizzes were supposed to be summative. I wasn't supposed to be doing anything with them. They were supposed to be these low bandwidths, push them over. They became formative. I was dropping back and punting in a lot of my classes about what I had to teach again. So, and I was only re-quizzing the one problem. So if you got 4 or 5 right and you missed one, I was kind of pulling the Dan Meyer thing. If you ever heard about him, he would flip over and just make another problem. So I would do that, flip over and make another problem. I stole his idea. And, you know, that only works if everything else was mastered. All right? I start tracking this data about the idea that I'll get a trend line that, oh, you know, at least the assessments are getting better, right? No ACT data, but my quizzes, the scores are going to be getting better. I'm going to pocket these skills and I'm going to be able to see that things are going better. No way. It's flat. It is like, you know, hodgepodge of data. Doesn't matter what type of problem it is. Today you get, you know, order of operations right. Tomorrow you get it wrong. The next day you get it right. The next day you get it wrong. There's no rhyme or reason. There's nothing to look at. And I can't understand why. I was quizzing wrong. And it wasn't much the quiz as the re-quiz. Again, I was setting the bar too low. And students were just getting over it on me. How you re-quiz might be more important than how you quiz. I call it pump and dump. A kid would get 4 out of 5 right. They would look at that 5th one. Yeah, I got it. Walk in. Blah, onto the page for their 10 points. And bye-bye birdie. Away it goes. And the other 4 problems, too, you might say, well, if they know the other 4, well, a lot of times they might get one of those other 4 lucky. Correct. You know, might have got lucky to get that one correct. Or if you make them do the other 4, it makes students harder to pump and dump if they have to do other problems. So when you put them in context and remix them up, all of a sudden, I started seeing the scores get better. I started seeing now, you miss order of operations a couple times in a row, but they come in and work on it, and they start mastering. Now I'm not writing one problem. Now I'm forced to write all 5 on the back, which is not doable. I started actually, when I would make a quiz, and they were going twice a week, I would write 3 right away. Well, that's not going to happen. And I started giving the same quiz across the board, and that's not working either because they should be differentiated. I'm just doing that. I'm struggling. So I start using a worksheet generator. I trade away context. I stop writing my own questions. It's just, I don't have time. It's called Juda. You got it? I love it. It has its place. And I can't come back and say at this point, this is going to seem somewhat drawing pillish. Less than 20% of my week. 2 quizzes a week. We never review the problems in class. All right? This fits parallel or next to what I do. This is not what I do. They look like this. I wish the screen was bigger. This one's old. So this is my Algebra 1B class. I do have code. Everybody gets a code, right? Algebra 1B, 04-12-12. So April 12th of 2012, 2 years ago. And this is what I call mastered material, non-negotiables. My tests are about what we're doing currently in class. These are about skills that I can just, you should know, these should be easy, let's go fast. A lot of grouping here at the lower level. I don't group this much anymore. First order, distributing, exponents, factoring, and a graph. And 14 questions, Algebra 1B, so this is my lower function group. I give them, that class probably 16, 17 minutes for this. Maybe 14. If this was my other algebra class, my regular algebra class, I'd give them 11. You know, real short, and I love giving them at the end because that's often dead time. It's time they don't want to work. So I'm a complete believer that on the partial credit. I had more than one incident. The polynomial division is just the most embarrassing. But I had many instances where students came in and told me, oh yeah, I just was crossing the bar you said. I didn't care about the mathematics. Because they don't. That's fine. We just have to set bar high enough that knowing the mathematics gets you over the bar. And I'm embracing these recursive queries with no partial credit, but what about accountability, right? How do I get students to really care? I don't care what scale you use. This is just mine. I think, I'll go through it, but I think you got to come to 55% of a student's grade at my school is these quizzes. Because I am not producing an Algebra 1 student I'm producing a student ready for college and career after the senior year. And to put it in perspective, that means an Algebra 1 student, over half their grade is 8th grade material and down. It means a geometry student, half their grade and down is Algebra 1 and down. I'm only taking a third of the grade from the current time of material. And that falls to my belief that it takes time to learn things. That we're developing a student over 4 years. I'm not trying to make a student a master of geometry just this year. Those skills will come again and again. And you use it or you lose it. I do it through these quizzes. You get the practice here. We're still doing the concepts, the project work, parallel to this, but this is how I do it. Test, 100 points a week, 10 points for homework, 150 points for a couple of quizzes, about 25 to 40 points. Usually it's actually 80 points every couple of weeks on the essays or whatever they're handing in, but it splits up to that. I've actually gotten homework down to a little less than 1.5%. The only reason I really have any homework in the grade at all is in a small rural community, they expect you to send home homework. There's a parent expectation for this. I don't think the scale matters much. I like our 7% scale because if I give a 14 question test, 11 is an okay score, but 10 isn't. And if these are mastered skills, you want to make sure you're pushing those kids. 85% of what I grade is summative assessment. Not the course, but their overall math picture. What a student looks like. And that drives accountability. Because they know if they can't do these quizzes, they can't escape my class. And I joke about it all the time, don't worry, we got 4 years to do 3 years of math. Right? Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. That's what you need to be ready for college and career. My goal is to get to 1% homework. I have a special homework policy because I tell you what, if I knew when I was a kid that 1% homework was that, I would have never done homework. Except I have a policy. It's really easy. I worked in a machine shop before this, and I always joke, if I would have given you a part to make by 3:30 at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you decide not to do it, would you get to go home at 3:30? No. So this says that if you don't have your homework done, I'm allowed to hold you after school that day. Because it was obviously a problem of time, or you don't know what to do. And I'm going to solve that problem for you that day, either way. I don't enforce it every single day, but it gives me the right to. And again, it makes it so if a student doesn't hand in homework, I'll give them an incomplete for the quarter. This is just your job. I don't care what it's worth. Yeah.
So your students have all their homework done each quarter, and you don't give them anything?
Right.
How does your administration feel about this?
Well, we don't ask. The good news, my administrator, listen, as long as I can keep it between me and the parents, it works all right. It's a bigger problem with the secretaries because unfortunately I'm not allowed to issue incomplete. So when I walk up with 22 incompletes for a quarter, sometimes I get a little eye roll. And you got to remember again, I'm talking 90 students. But I have 95 in high school. I got 107 in my rosters this year or something like that because of physics. Yeah. I don't ask. This is my room. So, and if they don't practice, they're not going to get any better. But given one of the big problems I think when I started at Juda is that when I came in, homework was close to 35% of the grade. And that obviously wasn't working because we weren't getting the scores. So I don't know if that helps or hurts, yeah.
This kind of, on my district, we just kind of tweak on that one because the busing.
Yeah.
I don't know how many.
Well, listen. Okay, so listen. You gotta use
the busing issue that, and I've tried to do this, and I think it's a great idea. But the busing thing at my school, and parents would do that too.
Well, the parents, and you gotta pick your points. I have a couple students I know better than to keep after school. But once I say that, I say, well, I don't really want to stay today. So come down when the bus comes in. I don't want to stay today. Come in during your study hall. Well, I got to do this for another class. Nah, I love doing that because that's like, I don't care. You're going to do my stuff. You should have done my stuff. Why would I care about science? So I do things like that too. I have some farmers I know I can't take. Listen, small district, I have kids that go home and work like adults. They go home and milk cows. They work harder than I do physically. I'm never holding one of those kids after school. You got to use your head. I use this as my way. This is my stick. You sign it with your parent. I signed this the first day. Parents sign it. And it says here, if it's at the very bottom, it's hard to read, that if you can't hold them after school, I ask them to put a note when I can't hold them. What can I pull them out of? And another thing, athletes never get any, I can always hold athletes. And in a small district, that's about half my kids. So again, this works for 90% of the kids. All my systems are set up for 90%. I'll deal with the 10% fairly. Now again, it opens yourself up. If you're a person who thinks equal and fair are the same, this is really hard to manage. I have no problem looking at you and say, yeah, you got to stay after school. You got to come in at lunch. Come on, just do your homework so I don't have to deal with you tomorrow. I know you're going to go home and milk cows tonight, but just get it done. And she says, what about him? I'm like, yeah, you don't milk cows. And then I don't talk about you.
Do you have one that just kind of slips through, that just won't do it, and your parents won't?
That comes to classroom culture. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow on my classroom. We don't grade homework in class. We don't collect homework in class. We don't spend time on homework in class. We're doing problems. I have a no opt-out policy. I have one student on 95 right now who wants to sit with his, he wants to do the thinker position and sleep. I don't let them. I guess I hate to say it that way. I don't let them. And you're saying, well, what do you mean you don't let them? Well, I try to make my class interesting enough that he wants to be there. And if he won't do the work, I put him in the office. So, and you create that culture. Yeah, I got kids who fight me on it. And I deal with them one student a year out of 100. And I deal with them. And it takes a lot of my time. That one kid's annoying. I go home, talk to my wife about it, have a refreshment, and think, oh, what am I going to do with little Joey this year? And his name is actually Joey this year. The other thing I do is I'm a big believer in notation. I have in my syllabus that I am allowed to move your grade up one letter or down one letter because it's notation. So if you do great notation, you do some double checks, I can give you a couple points if I want. And I do that, so students are checking their answers and see how it works. Likewise, if I have to play search and destroy, I call it the egg timer for my class. If I have to flip the egg timer to grade your assignment and the egg timer runs out, you're losing points. I don't care what your answer was. Because that's unacceptable in the world. So is it working? Yeah. We started very low in 09. In 010 was not a year. This is graduating class. So this is the first class here in 11 that was doing the quizzes. The other thing about 2010, 6 kids took the ACT in 2010 at Juda. 6. So when you see 50% met the benchmark, woo! That's 3 kids. Big a whoop. But it does kind of skew the graphs, but we'll talk about that. I think this is the best thing for us to talk about. The ACT says you need a 22 or better to be ready for college math. All right? If you don't have a 22 or better, theoretically you're going to end up in remedial math or you're not having the skills. This, and again, don't screw up the easy. These are low skills, guys. We're doing some things different going forward, but these are low skills. This is not changing the student who was getting a 26 math. Nothing I've shown yet has changed that. But the kid who was getting an 18, the kid who was getting a 19, the kid who was getting a 20, now are getting 22s, 23s. And this is, and this is an easy way to change averages. If it's important in your district, it's important to you. It's important to me because those are the students that when you come to college, remedial math at college typically is a death sentence, is what they learn at UW-Platteville. Nearly half the students that go in remedial math don't get out. And if you can't get through one math course at UW-Platteville, you cannot graduate. So when we send a kid and we think we've done the right thing and the nice thing and helped them through pre-calc and he gets a C+, you really haven't. You graph it, it looks like nothing. Except the math score is higher than composite, so I can pick on the English teacher. Alright? But there's a trend here when I drop in a line. It's not significant. But this is what I look at, and this is how I deal with data now. I don't have enough students. I have a class of 6 kids in 2010. So how do I get a sample size north of 25? I take the years, and so if I'm looking at 2010, I added 10, 9, and 8. If I had 2011, I had 11, 10, and 9. 12 was 12, 11, 10, and so forth. And when you do that, you start to see what's going on. We're making a long-term improvement. We're using Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 as a way to move students to an end product. I'm not teaching geometry during geometry. I'm teaching math across multiple years. My department thinks it's great. This is significant, guys. 0.67. I knew it worked. It works. We've moved at Juda from roughly in the 20.5 area to I can't break it. I can't get above 23 yet, but we're in that 22.5 area for ACT average. That's our next step. And the bigger thing is this ACT benchmark. Juda did its best to hold down the national average is only 46% in 2012. I couldn't find 2013's number. I didn't search real hard, I'll be truthful. I was working on this late again. But less than half the students who take the ACT get the benchmark score for being ready for college math. And let's back up for a second. Until the Smarter Balance uses the ACT, who takes the ACT? Only college-bound kids. So half the kids who think they're going to college aren't meeting the benchmark. That's all of us. All right? We've moved now up to about 70%. And I'm excited by this number because I had 82% of my seniors take it last year. I am not fearful, guys, when the Smarter Balance adds the ACT. I'm excited. Only 5 kids didn't take it out of 24 this year at Juda. Because when you raise the standards, and I have no proof for this, but when you raise the standards and you make the kids accountable, they start to think they can do things. Math is hard. Yeah. Tough. Yeah, it is. But when you can do the math, you can do the next thing. The kids are convinced, and it plays back. Kids who come back and say, yeah, college math was easy. That's what you want to hear. I always joke, you want me to teach you the toughest math you're ever going to have to take. Because how many kids are going to the STEM? I'm sending 5, at least 14 doing other things in college. You know, those other 14, they want me to be their toughest math. Period. That is where this has worked. And again, 30 minutes, 35 minutes a week. You know? And plus, guys, when you have 8 preps, you need downtime. You need time to sit at your desk. Because when I teach, I stand. And when we work, I work the desk. I don't go to the back, I don't assign homework to sit. This is how I get my desk time. Oh, I love this graph just because it's so ugly. This is the grades by year. And when I came to Juda, somewhere around 30 to 40% of all the grades issued in mathematics were A's. And
But the ACT scores were...
the base scores, yeah. Well, and then we had a valedictorian, you know, and God bless his soul, who scored 21 on or 22 on his math ACT. First year I was there.
valedictorian.
Yeah. So again, you have to be prepared for the battles. I'm not going to tell you this is not, you know, I don't care what the administration says. I'll deal with the one parents who freak out. I will deal with these are the harder parents to deal with. When your kid used to get an A, and your kid no longer gets an A. Guys, I do not fear the kid who doesn't do his homework's parents. In my district, a lot of times, they'll be okay. I fear these people. How's my kid going to get in a good college? And I always say the same thing to that, by the way. If your kid can't do this stuff, they'll get in, but they won't get out. They won't succeed. Yeah.
So when your students don't do well on these quizzes, and it's only 30 to 40 minutes a day to focus on these skills,
Yep.
when do you go back and talk to them?
They got to come in. I got RTI time. I have a homeroom period. We have silent reading. They can come to me then. I'm there before school. I'm there after school. I'm there during lunch. But we do not spend class time reviewing it, period.
So the kids can continue to slide until they think
I'll flunk them. And then there comes a point where if a kid won't come in, I'll make a plan. But the plan is outside the hour. Yep. Yeah. But I will not, I cannot. Because if you end up tolling these skills that are so low into your hour, I think it just sucks up everything I'm trying to do conceptually.
How many kids are you failing with?
Ah!
Right there?
5%. 5%. And now you look at the big jump there in 2012. There was a year there where I flunked 12, and that had to do with a big step in how the quizzes were done. It's also, though, you got to say to yourself, am I doing a service? I would challenge you guys this. If I send you my D- geometry student and put them in your Algebra 2 class, they'll be able to do math. My D- students can do math. What I used to have was D- students who couldn't do math. I give no seat grades, period. It's a disservice. And yeah, it means some ugly, but it also gives the recurring time. I mean, my favorite examples, I have a couple of students who, they fight me the whole way. And I know they copy the whole way. But my favorite joke is you either can learn through the homework or you can learn through tests and quizzes. I don't care. When the test goes from, because we will review tests in class, unit tests for the current material. And then sometimes in class when we're doing projects, kids will say, Mr. Ash, can you just show me on this one quiz while I'm walking the aisles when we're working on a project? Can you just show me how this happened? Why didn't I get this one right? I'll answer those questions, but I never stop, go to the board and say, everybody look at quiz number 7. No, that can't take away those precious moments to do that. So the big thing here is I have a lot more D's. I have a lot of D's now on a 70% scale. But it's working. Oh, wrong way, sorry. I think this is the best graph. And again, such a small class too. Only 6 took the ACT in 2010. The class was really dinky. In small schools, I have a theory, maybe you guys who have, classes tend to either float themselves up or bring themselves down. 2010 was a rough year. So, again, this is the graph I like. This is the one I track. Yeah.
These students taking the actual ACT or retired ACT?
Actual ACT.
Okay.
Yep.
So they're paying for it? Or
Yep, they're paying for it.
Okay.
I'm excited that next year, I hope the Smarter Balance becomes the ACT. I wrote some questions for the Smarter Balance last summer. I'd rather see the ACT after doing that. So, and my big plan now is how do we get, there's a threshold we've hit in here. We've hit a threshold with this. So where's it going? I want to raise the top scores. We're redesigning the quizzes now for pre-calculus and the end of Algebra 2. Or when they say we, I don't know, I guess me and myself. But with the students, we're trying to look here. What should a student who completes pre-calculus be getting on the ACT if you look at the bands? Should I have a pre-calc student who's finished pre-calc with, C pluses, B minuses? Should they score only 24 or 23? No, they shouldn't. I think if you went and looked at your data, you'd be surprised how many would. All right? So my big thing is to do that. I also set up my curriculum to make pre-calc that high-rigor class. I mentioned in the beginning senior math. I created senior math so I could have a high-rigor pre-calc course and a senior math course that still kept kids ready to go to college. Non-STEM math. So they went in and be ready to place. We're trying to come up with an actual measurement system for my seniors, so I can get a hold of you and actually have numbers. Right now, what I tell you, if I would tell you stories, they're all little stories about what students told me. But I will tell you that I know in the last 2 years, I've only sent one student to remedial math at college. And when she left, she knew. So her and I had big conversations about, you find the help center on day 1, you put in 2 hours a day, you work your butt off, you get through this, you get through the other one, you never take math again. And that's what happened. And if you haven't watched or used the EMPT, the early placement test, I think you should. It's a good way for students, especially in their junior, senior year, to see where they're sitting, right, if they're college ready or not. I've been accepted, or CISA 5 is running a college and career readiness standard. I'm part of that team in Portage in June. They're going to write a curriculum. I'm excited because then you get to use it for free for a year. And at Juda, that's really the price I got to have. My budget for all those courses, $200. And since I let the kids write on the desk with Expo markers, I invest $100 in markers every year and Windex. So I want to get back to context, but I've put it in my projects. Bigger projects on Google Docs, students revising. I really want to focus on the Common Core practices, perseverance, and those things with my projects. So those are going. I started flipping Algebra 1 this year. I did 50 lessons flipped. So, and if you're interested in that conversation, that's a whole other thing. I'm doing another presentation on how I changed my classroom on that. And I'm actually going to flip a lesson during the presentation. So, because I have Algebra 1 tomorrow, 7th hour, and at 11:30 tomorrow I got to make a video so they can watch it. So, that's my presentation. If you have any questions, you want any data, I can show you. Please, where am I at? Somebody got, I don't even know what time it is.
46.
Oh, look at that. Perfect. So, if you have any questions, I'm more than willing to answer them. This takes years. But the last thing I'll say is this. I'm very excited because I am now, in Algebra 2 especially, I don't have to review elimination, substitution, polynomial division, because I got that in Algebra 1 a couple of years ago. I don't have to review trig, law of sines, law of cosines. I don't have to review exponents, power rule or product rule. All that stuff from day one of Algebra 2, they know. It was a very good year that way. And it's not like this is, again, you can say, well, this is the class. No, it's not the class. You know, they know their functions.
I know you're like being a math teacher, and you're part of it, but the math teacher below you, I'm sure like one of them, doing this as well. So
She started, I got a brand new math teacher in the middle school, and she's doing it this year with fractions and integers. We've had kind of the same revolving door problem. We've had issues, but she is now doing the same quizzes now for fractions, integers. Because I accomplish all this, and guys, Algebra 1 at my school still starts with adding and subtracting fractions, PEMDAS, order of operation with integers. And I spend a month on that still in my curriculum in Algebra 1 with high 8th graders and low freshmen. My 1A class, we do that for about a semester. So when I talk about all these results, I'm still starting Algebra 1 at that point. I'm excited because she's doing those quizzes now. She's making that non-negotiable down at that end. I sometimes call those. If I can get that month of September back in Algebra 1, that would be very exciting for my curriculum. And she's on board with it. So, yeah. So then I won't have to review area of circle, area of rectangles. Because we do that too in Algebra 1. Because you just got to start where they're at, and that's where they're at right now, coming freshman year. So that's getting done. This is the first year we've done it. I'm excited to see. I got to give her a couple of years, because I joke with her all the time. You know, when your 6th graders this year become 8th graders and I get them, that's when we'll see how it's working. Can I, in 2 years, get rid of fractions in that class? And when I say get rid of, I mean they know them well enough that I just don't have to. We can just put them on quizzes and go. And if you're ever interested, again, you send me an email. I have all these quizzes if you're curious what they look like. You think you'd make them once and use them forever and ever, but you don't. Because as they get better at things, you make the quizzes much harder. The quizzes from 2010 are wickedly easy compared to the quizzes they're doing today. So,